so much, everyone, for staying with us. So let's focus our attention on the economy. There are situations relating to the price of commodities in Nigeria, agitations against issues related to food shortage. We understand now that the federal government, the president that is, has ordered the release about 42,000 metric tons of grains from the National Reserve as part of measures to cushion current hardship of food shortage in the country. We understand that information coming from the federal government of Nigeria. But of course, there is a court order asking the federal government to fix the price of goods and petroleum products within 7 days from yesterday when the court gave the order. Justice Ambrose Lewis Alagwa granted the order, secret to an originating motion filed and argued by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana. Mr. Falana dragged the Price Control Board and the Attorney General of the Federation to court, both of whom he listed as defendants before the court to determine whether by the virtue of Section 4, subsection 1 of the Price Control Act, laws of the Federation of Nigeria, the fourth defendant, which is the Price Control Board, is carrying out its duty to impose a price on any goods that are of the kind specified in the fourth schedule to the Price Control Act. We understand that these prices can affect milk, flour, and some other commodities that are essential to the living of general Nigerians. So a lot of people will remember what happens sometimes in the 80s when there are specific special measures and schemes introduced by the then military government. But let's get talking about these issues relating to price control, commodities, and its pricing, and what the federal government has just done. I'm being joined on the program by Professor Utomi, a political economist who joins us from Lagos. Thank you so much, Prof, and I appreciate your time tonight. Give us an understanding. This looks like a critical measure. It looks like an emergency situation that the federal government is faced with. Labor on one hand, putting pressure on government. The prices of commodity and the shortage of those commodities are also putting pressure on Nigerians. But is it the right way to go, though?
Sheon, you are actually putting me in a very difficult situation. My long-standing ally, Femi Falana, SAN, has gone to court. He's gotten a judgment, and this judgment is not going to get us anywhere in solving this economic problem. Now, let me remind everybody about price control and the experience of it. One of the things that people like me who are teachers like to teach businessmen is to get a return on experience. If you have an experience, you get a return on it so that you don't make the same mistake again. If you are not climbing the learning curve, then the cost of progress is much higher for you. But back in the 80s, as you already indicated, Nigeria had a price control agency called Prices, Promotions and Incomes Board, PPIB. PPIB was responsible for many of the problems that structural adjustment tried to deal with. I mean, I've just been writing about what was wrong with structural adjustment. The concept of adjustment was obviously important, but its implementation had problems. However, one of the big challenges of the time that led to structural adjustment was this kind of thing like price control. I give you one that I was intimately associated with that was ridiculous. First of all, in those days, you used to allocate foreign exchange. It was a block currency. It was not a market-driven foreign exchange market. And if I could, I don't know how quickly we will move, but I would like to get back to foreign exchange markets and why Nigeria is in the mess it is with the value of the Naira and stuff like that. But anyway, to go back to price control board. And so price control board is supposed to set a price for something. And it asks companies, give us your input pricing. So they say, we buy raw materials for $20. We do this, we do that. So price control says to you, okay, you have to sell this good for 10 Naira. You say, okay. You know that you did not get foreign exchange for the price that is quoted as the official exchange rate because you had to buy from one chief who bought from one Alaji who bought from And you know that if you sell it at that price, you will just go out of business. It can calculate the day you go out of business. You have given away all your money to shareholders. So you either stop producing, or if you are clever, like many people did in those days, you decide, okay, there is a price for a brand new good, say something like a car, but there is no price for a used one. So your business becomes generating as many used cars as possible, because people of their own, because of supply-demand issues, will pay 3 times for a used car the price of a brand new car. You see the absurdity of it. But that went on. And until adjustment policies led to both freeing of the exchange market and a freeing of pricing generally, supply, demand, then regulated prices, and you reach a certain equilibrium that allow people to pay a decent price, and the availability took place. What we will see if we implement some of those policies is exactly what Venezuela experiences, that we experienced during the price control regime. The government, in fact, then went as far as setting up a company called the National Supply Company to actually bring in sugar, milk, all that stuff to sell at a regulated price. What happened? Became the den of corruption. And you can go on and on what these things do.
Prof, apologies if I may jump in quickly. So you see what the governor of Niger State did. He has since banned until further notice the bulk sale and purchases of food items in the state because of the issues of pricing and speculations on some of these commodities. So governments are making, and if you look at other African countries, there's so much pressure on their currencies too. Kenya, to Ghana, to Egypt, there are pressures on their currency. Nigeria is battling on one hand inflation rising, on the other hand the issue of FX that is not looking good. But where do the federal government go from here? Because the president declared months ago a state of emergency on food security. So if you were the president, what would you do to salvage the situation immediately?
See, Seun, this is an interrelationship of many things. One very important component in this thing is security. Farmers can't farm because, it's not secure to go to a farm. So there is no food that is available. How do you make security available to people so they can farm? That's another question, but it's related. It's very important. Obviously, there are problems that have been, in my view, created by Nigerian politicians. Our problem in this country, the politicians are responsible for most of it. First, the discipline of sitting down to work at problems is not there. And secondly, the perception of the people is that politicians are taking care of themselves. I mean, imagine how ridiculous it is at the time when people are suffering the way they are, and politicians are still throwing their freebies around, buying funny, fancy cars, doing all kinds of things. When you get this kind of emergency, everybody crashes. If politicians have to go by motorcycle around, let them go. There's nothing wrong with that. But the people will see everybody sacrificing something to fix something. You go after, but we're not in a market economy. So in a market economy, how do you deal with this kind of problem? Bringing in controls, again, is not exactly how you deal with it. You deal with inputs. Okay, we got into problems as a global economy during COVID. What did the governments that intervened do? They essentially made more money available to people where they needed to and stuff like that. They didn't say, no, you can't sell at this price. You do things relative to and aligned to the particular strategy that you're pursuing. The problem is we're not sure what strategy the Nigerian government is pursuing. It's not clear. Because when you are sure what your strategy is, you can then begin to align things. Within a market economy trajectory, these are the kinds of interventions that will facilitate, that will lower inflation. Okay, yeah, monetary policy. Yeah. So interest rates will go up. You get to a point. It's not sensitive to interest rates going up anymore. Who is borrowing? How? There are other more fundamental problems. Check out how South Korea has tried to deal with these kinds of problems in recent months, how they intervene directly with manufacturers and so on and so forth. So it has to be, the starting point is, what's the model of this economy we're pursuing? What's our national strategy? And so what things are effectively aligned? Everybody has to now sit down and say, look, our country is in crisis, but the politicians are still playing politics, and everything is, you abuse this person, you abuse that person. They don't even think. And our country is drifting. So I think that the leadership needs to rise.
All right, Prof,
across the board.
Yeah. Let me put you in a very difficult situation, because I like also to be frank. Because what we are talking,
you always do.
No, I try to I try to have a conversation that will help the polity. But let's be frank here, Prof. Whatever situation that we are in right now is a situation that needs some urgency, that needs some quick attention. It cannot wait till tomorrow. There are things that need to be done immediately. And I'd like to know, we've heard from Atiku Abubakar on how he thinks that the government is going about the business of economy. He doesn't agree with the federal government about the manner in which they're going about it. Peter Obitu has criticized. But beyond all of this criticism, give us an understanding of the fact what the federal government is doing wrongly. What would you say is a primary step that you can say maybe a misstep or a mistake or an error in judgment that the federal government is taking immediately that needs to be corrected quickly?
I mean, Shehu, you can glean this from what I have already said. My friend, Professor Osita Obu, has just written a book about development, his attitude. How do you get a certain attitude that helps with problem solving at this particular time? It has to do with what I say all the time. It's about values. Character is everything. If the world does not trust you, they won't give you the slack. But right now, the people who are running things must sit down with IMF types and co. They don't have to go into IMF, tell us what to do kind of thing. But they must sit down with them. Look, even the IMF and the World Bank say they're not sure that even this regime is transparent with oil receipts. They've said it openly, it's not a hidden thing. So everybody has to come clean. Look, if only we just improved our earnings from oil, coming from somebody who has said for years that we should shut the oil wells, possibly, if we're going to get a sense out of this country. If only we could just, and we have the capacity to actually produce 3, maybe even 4 million barrels a day, breaking OPEC quotas or whatever it is that we need to break. But why is it being stolen? Who is stealing it? Come on, Shehu, in this world, in this age of technology, where you can spot from satellite somebody's name tag on a battlefield, they don't know who is stealing shiploads of crude oil. There's something wrong. If they,
did you smell sabotage?
Ship out.
Do you smell sabotage, or you smell deliberate attempt at crippling the economy?
Who of who?
I'm asking.
The political class generally is too narcissistic, so self-centered. They don't really care about people. I tell you honestly, if they did, they would realize what's going on and say, look, fellows, this is our country, we're destroying it. Let's sit down now. Everybody, let's sit down and see how we fix this thing. But they're all still playing games of who has power, who rigged, who did that, and your country is dying. It's a tragedy that we have this kind of people, and they call themselves politicians.
Prof, so you called it a tragedy. I call it a ticking time bomb, because the average person is like the grass that is suffering. The big man in this country are not as feeling the pinch as the average person. The anguish and the pains, the things that the average Nigerian citizens are feeling is very critical. And they are unable to speak for themselves. That's the unfortunate thing. But, Prof, take a look at the prices of commodities. I've been showing this for the last days on this program, but it is mind-boggling. And it's perhaps one of the things that Femi Falana had gone to court to also argue in the court against the federal government and the price control board. He said sellers are not always sincere as they are so desperate to make excessive profits at the expense of buyers. Prof, look at the cost of Gary. Look at the cost of rice, the cost of palm oil,
Absolutely.
the cost of cement. Nigerian, the average citizen are the ones suffering. Is there anything that can be done urgently to alleviate this suffering?
Look, Shehu, my friend FF obviously is moved by the right passion, obviously. But economics tells us that that path is not what will solve it. But the fact that he has pushed that pressure button should be a call to order for everybody to come and look, let's sit down. You, these politicians, come out and come out clean. Who is stealing the oil? What can we do to reduce insecurity, get people to be able to go to the farms and they are producing food for people to eat, get these oil pumps earning the dollars, 2, 3, 4 million barrels a day, whether we break OPEC quota or not, and get that. Look, for many years, Nigeria has depended on foreign exchange sent home by the diaspora. Diaspora has become a significant part of this economy. And they are supporting their people from there because things are not going well for most of their people. But you know what? That used to lead to an inflow of foreign exchange into the country. And that helped us keep things going. Today, technology, entrepreneurship has made it such that that dollar is not coming to Nigeria. They simply use one app, and a Nigerian in London or Chicago who wants to solve a problem for their person here gives dollars to somebody who is there, and Naira goes to the persons here. So yes, he solves the problem, but the Nigerian economy has not received the input of the dollar. And central bank helped contribute to that by some missteps they made in the last few years. So this is a major reason why the exchange rate is tumbling. Can we fix that? It is possible, but it takes people sitting down. It takes people believing that the character of those who are making decisions,
all right, Prof,
such that they can trust them,
Prof,
that they can trust those people.
Yeah, I'm being told I have less than 30 seconds to go. In our editorial 2 Sundays ago, we told the world and we told the president that all the eggheads in this country needs to come into one room and think about how we can get out of this economic quagmire. If we are to do that, Prof, if you are the president today and he's your friend, if you can talk to him tonight via this platform in 30 seconds, how do we go about getting all the eggheads in this country to fixing our economy? Can we do that in 30 seconds?
Yeah, the problem is that my head is made of bone, not eggs. That's a big problem you have with that question. Look, Mahathir Mohamad, you know, when Malaysia was in a similar crisis situation, just essentially assembled the thinking people and said to them, nobody leaves this room unless we agree to how to fix our country. That led to what was called the new economic policy. And that was the beginning of Vision 2020 and the rise of Malaysia. Those things can be done, but you've got to lay down all this braggadocio. You know, there's a legitimacy crisis in the country. You know, you were talking to INEC people, and I joked with you when we were coming on, who takes INEC seriously anymore? You couldn't make moves that make people believe that you are serious about being taken seriously. INEC should be fired. Everybody there should go. Should begin to rebuild their institutions. That sends a signal.
We are totally out of time, Prof, but I must sincerely thank you so much. Okay. I appreciate it. In any case, you are an egghead. You are not a bonehead. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight. Well, that's our show for today. Many thanks for watching. Bye-bye, everyone.